we're back. We got the Spice Finance guys. Shreddy, Oogway, how we doing?
Yo,
We're
good to
doing
be
amazing.
here.
How are you?
Very, very good. Markets seem happy, so I'm happy. Death to all bulls is what I say.
Yeah, keep them suppressed so I can continue to accumulate. Correct.
Yeah, everyone's a lot nicer to each other when markets are green. Even though people are still salty. People are really, really still salty, and you can kind of see who's sidelined. Kamikaze even admitted he's wrongdoing around Shanghai. So I don't know what phase in the market we're in, but it's an enjoyable one given the past year.
Yeah. And there's still a good amount of PvP out there, that's for sure.
Yeah, let's bring back those Avalanche Rush days. Those purely PvE. Yeah. I want to loop 10 times on RV and get paid for it. So why don't we fill the audience in a little bit of background on maybe both of you and kind of your roles at Spice. Maybe Shreddy, we can kind of start with you and just do a bit high level before we get into the product.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Shreddy. I've been, interested and a user of crypto for a very many number of years. But I recently started working in DeFi. I say recently, but it's been about 2 years. Started in 2021 at a little known protocol called Olympus DAO.
Oh yeah.
Which, yeah. we're all secretly 3-3 somewhere, right? Like, 3-3 still out there, still alive. But that was great. I got my start there working on the marketing and business dev side of things for Olympus. That transitioned into a couple of other, projects that spun out from Olympus. And I found my way into the Arbitrum ecosystem. And I got situated with Jones DAO, which is the hat protocol. And, I guess a little bit of how I came to Spice is Oogway and the rest of the team, the founders, were good buddies of mine for a long time. And when I found out that they were, creating a protocol in NFT Finance, I was like, you guys have to have me come on and help you out. I needed to be part of the team. So, I begged and I convinced them, and eventually with enough nagging, I was able to find my way on the team. And, we've been I think rocking since about September. And I've been with the team since December. So it's been great.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Was it like the reverse interview on Step Brothers? He's like,
yeah,
why don't I interview you?
Exactly.
We're in a tuxedo to the interview. So Oogway, what's your kind of role here? How did this all come about? Like, what was the ideation? I'm kind of giga bullish on the whole financialization of NFTs. I don't know where we are in that life cycle. I expect it's the stage where the butterfly is beginning to flap his wings and a tornado is like maybe months ahead. But yeah, if you could kind of fill us in, what was the origin story around that, and kind of how you kind of came to want to build in this particular space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just a little background on myself before I jump into that. I came over from a TradFi background. I worked in mergers and acquisitions, kind of ranging from fintech, large banks, healthcare, to even some gaming and entertainment companies that were looking to expand into blockchains and quote unquote metaverse. Got involved pretty heavily in DeFi and just around trading and then shaping governance based on my experience in TradFi, a little bit of experience with Olympus. And then I guess like what led us to start Spice Finance is really a kind of like philosophical conviction around the future of NFTs. So I think high level, we identified that non-fungibility is a pretty core feature in large variety of assets, kind of can represent more complex assets. And the kind of next evolution of where DeFi was going to go is going into the NFT finance space, being able to kind of create financial products and financial services for non-fungible assets. That in itself is a pretty difficult problem that isn't even solved in the traditional finance space uh, in full extent. And so it's kind of a space and industry that has almost like a infinite amount of problems to be solved, but also an infinite amount of opportunities. And so, like you mentioned, we're very much so at the beginning where the butterfly flaps its wings, and a few years out, you're going to have a hurricane somewhere, right? So that's kind of what got us looking at the industry. And then after we started looking at the industry, we kind of picked some of the bigger problems that are plaguing the space, and we started to tackle those, which is what led to Spice Finance.
Nice, yeah. Do you? I know there was a bit of backlash. Obviously, Kobe gets a lot of backlash whenever he says anything, and he also can crash the markets whenever he decides to tweet anything as well. But do you just subscribe to the idea that kind of there is more similarities than differences? Obviously, the underlying technology and the fungibility is completely different to, I don't know, your ERC20s and whatever other token standards are available. But for me, even though the past, I don't know, 6 months, I'm really beginning to kind of see that whole space shape, and it's becoming a lot more tangible for me to kind of look at the NFT assets in that particular light. I don't know how much you kind of read into that or subscribe to that, or is there any kind of crossovers that you kind of see and people are just unwillingly they're not ready to accept it yet, particularly the kind of more art focused kind of NFT oriented folk?
Yeah. So I think, there's two pieces here. The first is like non-fungibility is a spectrum, right? A spectrum of full fungibility to pure non-fungibility. So purely fungible asset is one that can be interchanged with another for the same price. Fully, like, let's say two fully non-fungible assets are ones that are completely uncomparable to each other, right? They're just completely different. And so there is always going to be like even NFTs are going to fall somewhere along that spectrum. And that's kind of where you're seeing potentially like some of the blur activity, right? Like NFT perp and some of these financialization protocols lean into the fungibility of a lot of these tokens, a lot of these assets. And so they kind of say, floor price is what matters and we can trade significant volume there. There's a lot of benefits to that, right? Because you're increasing liquidity, but also, it comes at the cost of non-fungibility, right? Which has benefits in and of itself. I think what you're probably going to see happen is just like more infrastructure for non-fungibility get built out. And it's going to be inevitable that all non-fungible assets or non-fungible tokens will have a financialization component to them. I think that's something you can't necessarily stop because the markets are always speculating, and like speculation is kind of a key driver of a lot of the volume in the market. So there's good things that come along with it as well as like unforeseen things that are just going to be a function of kind of infrastructure getting built out there.
Yeah, completely agree. So why don't you kind of fill the audience in? Like what's the kind of high level kind of elevator pitch of Spice? And Shreddy, I don't know if you want to pick it up there, and then it might be what I find is people at within the same kind of organization or project or whatever, they can always kind of get the point across in kind of different ways. So it's always nice to hear it from both sides of the fence, if that makes any sense.
Exactly. Let me give the left curve. Oogway, you take the right curve side of things. So essentially, what you can think of Spice is by definition, it's an NFT lending liquidity aggregator. So a good analogy would be Yearn Finance or, some other protocols built on top of lending markets in DeFi that aggregate a bunch of these different layers and protocols into one package. You can deposit your ETH onto Spice and then get more ETH back. Now, on the back end, what that is, you know, a series of lending strategies, and Oogway can go into how those are kind of formulated and, you know, how we come to add in different marketplaces and collections. But essentially what it is an aggregation layer on top of the NFT lending market as it exists today, on Ethereum mainnet to start. But I think that's a good jumping off, just base definition there.
Yeah. I think honestly that was a pretty good explanation. The most simple explanations are usually the most right curve. So I'll give that to you, Shreddy.
Please.
I can give like I think like the way I see it is, well, first of all, like what exactly are we trying to like aim towards? And that's really kind of like what the mission is. I think we're looking to build out the future of NFT finance by building out like the critical infrastructure that's necessary for the industry. What that means for us, I think, more concretely is like right now we are an aggregator and a simplified liquidity scaling protocol that's focused on routing capital to some of the more promising NFT finance projects. At the moment, that's focused on NFT lending. So a different explanation of that would be we're effectively building simple automated vaults for users to deposit ETH or stablecoins, and they get to earn yield on that ETH or stablecoin across the NFT finance and NFT lending ecosystem.
Yeah. There's your clip right there. That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, that was beautiful. So so how are some of those? I know we touched upon it there. So how are some of those strategies getting put to use? Like where's effectively the base yield of that coming from? Where's the demand side? Where's the people willing to pay like the interest on that? Well, is anything emission based, or is it purely supply and demand side?
Yeah, so it's almost all purely supply and demand side. Most of the yield at the moment is coming from P2P marketplaces such as nft-fi and x2y2 and arcade are kind of the prime examples there. The kind of big reason a lot of yield is kind of able to be generated there is, number one, it's quite difficult to lend against NFTs. There's a lot of problems that come into that, and I can, you know, jump into describing some of the infrastructure necessary to lend there. What that means is there's not that much liquidity, not that many lenders, and a pretty stable supply of borrowers that are looking for liquidity against their assets, that are looking to or are willing to pay the APY in order to tap into liquidity across the liquid NFT ecosystem.
Yeah, and so if people are listening and maybe they're quite new to the space, as I mentioned before we jumped on, I got the in real life friend text, so there might be more kind of new market participants coming in and listening to this. Aside from your profile picture NFTs, where is the potential use cases lying for Spice across, I don't know, financialize NFTs of kind of real world assets and things like that? Is it something you guys are thinking about, or is it purely kind of on the profile picture kind of side, or is it might not be something now, or is it something that you kind of holding close to kind of pursue further down the line?
Yeah, I think in terms of what the protocol is focused on right now is the most liquid markets, which at the moment are contained basically to profile pictures. And I'm trying to think if there are any NFTs that fall outside of that realm. UniV3 positions might come to mind. I know there are a couple of protocols that have spun up around that. We've also spoken to some partners like Yearn Finance. I'll give them a quick shout out, who are trying to build basically the financial NFT, what would you call it? The financial NFT architecture right? And those guys are great. But yeah, for the moment, things are relegated to markets that work with these art NFTs.
I'm thinking just off the top of the head, like whenever we see the day of GameFi or Web3 gaming, whatever it's getting called at the minute, just kind of in-game assets. People might need to lend them for a specific quest and things like that. Is there a use case there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of the beauty of non-fungible tokens, is that they can represent, most assets will probably get represented as NFTs. So in-game assets are kind of a great example. Even if you move outside of like the Web3 example, like talking about CSGO, Counter-Strike skins, right? A lot of those are non-fungible in nature. They have like different wear and tear and different kind of indicators. So in-game assets are going to be pretty popular, we think. Real-world assets, so intellectual property, legal contracts, like intangible brand value. Even houses and cars, right, that you interact in the real world are non-fungible in nature. So if those ever go on chain, that's another asset that you're able to lend against. Shreddy kind of mentioned UniV3 LP positions. Another interesting one, Parispace recently integrated Stakefish validators. So it's like an ETH validator that gets represented as a non-fungible token. You're able to go out and lend against that. So yeah, there's definitely a pretty wide array of assets that are going to be, NFTs, and naturally, if they're going to exist on chain, like there's going to be people that are going to want to lend against those and borrow against them.
So what's the user flow look like currently when they come into Spice, and like what kind of vaults have we got available? What's kind of on the horizon? Like, and how can you kind of like walk us through what, as I said, just the user flow would be like once they land on the app?
Yeah, definitely. Let me see if I can share a screen here. Will it let me? Okay. So I can start from like the tangible aspect of it. Can everybody see?
Yeah, that's up.
That's great. Let me just F11 this. Okay. All right. So basically how the user flow goes is there's already a step before this. You would have had to have heard of Spice somewhere. So maybe you follow us on Twitter. You got recommended, to check out Spice from a Blockmates podcast, or what have you. And you land on this beautifully designed website. We go ahead and enter the portal. And then we have a series of options here. It's pretty simple layout. And we're actually in the process of having a full scale redesign of this site. And, it'll be more optimized. There'll be a lot more options here. But for the moment, it's very simple. So in our current stage, the only vault that earns yield from a lending strategy is this Prologue vault. And the only way to access that Prologue vault is to have one of these NFTs that we minted as kind of like a bootstrapping of our community at the end of January, beginning of February. There were 555 of them. There's a very healthy secondary market for those NFTs. So, if people wanted to grab those, they're available. You can head into the Prologue vault, and you can see the APY here is a pretty healthy 20%. It's been ranging anywhere between 15, 20, 25%. I think the historical APY is somewhere around 17%. I would have to check. I'd have to check that.
I think my screen's frozen on the landing page. Is it showing? Is it just showing the tab?
Oh shoot. Okay. My bad. How about this?
Oh, there we go.
So you would come onto the vaults. It looks like this. You would see this Prologue vault here. You've got the APY, like I mentioned. Here's a current rundown of our, Prologue TVL that we have in there. And, we've got a tight-knit community of users who are currently, maxing out their ETH stack in the vaults, which is great. On Thursday, we're launching a flagship public vault, and that vault is going to allow anybody to access these lending strategies that we've bootstrapped with no barrier to entry. So you won't need any NFT receipt token, to basically access the vault. You'll just be able to come and get this, delicious organic ETH yield without any barriers to entry, like I said. So that's the current user flow. There's a couple of little intricacies there. As you can see, there's another vault here called Leverage Vault. This is a vault that powers a leverage function for the Prologue NFTs. So as a benefit for having a Prologue NFT, you do have the option to loop and lever up on your vault position, which I think is a really unique aspect of the protocol. This is definitely not novel in DeFi, but in NFT finance, it's pretty novel. And, we've kind of built a couple of things into that, such as some auto refinancing functions that make it very unique. So you have the opportunity to supply that mechanism with some liquidity, which you can see here. And then I would, if I was connected, you'd be able to pop into this. But, you can also get a leaderboard of all the other prologues. Since the Prologue NFTs are basically receipt tokens for vault positions, you kind of have to imagine that you would want to check before you were going to buy or sell a Prologue NFT if it had a position inside of it. So
yeah.
I think that's good for that. Oogway, did you want to talk about some of the things that we are kind of building out? Maybe a little bit of alpha leaking.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I can give some thoughts here. So I think like part of the flagship vault launch, which is coming in on Thursday, part of that is really opening up our vaults for public access. One of the things that we've been working on in terms of our infrastructure is the ability to spin up a wide variety of different vaults that are routing to a wide variety of different collections and at a wide variety of different risk levels. So the idea is after flagship, if we soak up a good portion of TVL, we're going to want to spin up, say 5 to 10 more vaults that give depositors the ability to kind of choose strategies that are more suitable to what they specifically want, allow them to kind of express their preferences better. So that's something we're pretty excited about launching kind of after the flagship launch, although ETA on that is still to be determined. I think some other pieces that probably like we didn't really cover here, but might give more clarity about why these vaults we think are necessary and why we think that users might want to have their own preferences. Within the NFT finance space, I think something that really isn't well understood versus DeFi is, like I was kind of mentioning, non-fungibility allows like a greater expression of like the complexity of assets. So you get more unique assets to be on chain. The problem with that is non-fungibility also increases like the long tail distribution of assets. And so an easy example with PFPs that I can give is, I can give you a pretty good idea of what like a floor crypto punk is worth today or what price it's going at. Pretty difficult for me to tell you what the price of a crypto punk with, let's say, 3D glasses and a cowboy hat is worth. And there's also just less buyers looking to buy at that non-floor price for that asset. And so that means NFTs have two difficulties. The first is pricing and the second is illiquidity. And not included, like outside of just the like smart contracts and aggregation that we've done, we've built two other pieces of infrastructure that I think are really going to shine when we begin to launch more vaults. The first are pricing feeds. So we aggregate a good variety of different pricing oracles that give us expected prices for, let's say, a CryptoPunk with 3D glasses and a cowboy hat. And then we also have risk oracles, which tell us what is the riskiness of lending against that asset. This kind of means that there is like a risk in NFT finance versus DeFi, where your assets are liquid and we don't really know what the right prices are, and so lending isn't perfect, right? And there's risk to lenders, but the benefits from that are there's significant native ETH returns on a risk-adjusted basis, and users can choose risk and can choose the collections that they feel confident in, if they want to kind of express that that's something I'm comfortable lending against, or this is a strategy that I'm more comfortable with, and you kind of get the returns that go along with that pricing and the risk involved of dealing with those collections.
Yeah, there was. I remember the early days of SudoSwap when people didn't necessarily know what they were doing, just playing around with it, and you'd find some very floor NFTs basketed in an LP with something that had a really, really high rarity trade. So people were kind of sniping in there, picking them up, and then obviously arbing them on like the likes of OpenSea and things like that. So it's I wonder if kind of more specific trade categorization plays into it a little bit more, and NFT projects that are wanting to go down the NFTi routes kind of lean into that a little bit more heavily to kind of give, I suppose, basketed weighting and prices to specific traits. I don't know if there's anyone you guys know of thinking about that, like, or so far ahead down that route.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I can't really say from an NFT side. I mean, a lot of collections have traits and baskets, and they try to price things according to those traits. I mean, one example can even be like all of these aren't necessarily traits, but like the Squiggle DAO team. They try to price various assets based on kind of rarity and what kind of attributes those might have. That said, there are kind of like two AMMs that directly want to build in trait baskets and rarity into the exchange, and those are Caviar and Collection XYZ. So they're kind of like SudoSwap, except they allow kind of segmentation by traits, and I think that's kind of going into that direction.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So when obviously it's very early days on the back end for specific strategies and even marketplaces to deploy into these strategies. So how's the strategy defined now? Is that more of like you guys kind of putting your heads together, seeing what's available out there? What does it look like in the future? Does it kind of, so people suggesting strategies? Like, how do you kind of look at it now, and how do you think it'll shape out in the future?
Yeah. So I guess right now I would say 95% quantitative decision making. So the collections we route against, the marketplaces we route to, and the prices for which things, loans get put out and at what APRs are a function of volume, market cap, volatility, and liquidity. And so like the strategies themselves, they rebalance and they route capital where you get the best risk adjusted returns. And so kind of the team really has no decision making involved with that. Where you may have some decision making is like there's some qualitative analysis we do in terms of integrating a specific marketplace or integrating a specific collection. Like we do try to get an understanding as to whether like a collection has had enough trade history and whether the team for that collection is strong and isn't going to be a rug, let's say, or whether a marketplace we're integrating has a strong team and it's worth the integration and the aggregation. So I guess that can be seen as a little bit more qualitative. I think our medium to long-term goal is really to progressively decentralize the protocol and begin to move a lot of that decision-making into the hands of the community. That said, like we're still kind of in that stage where we're building out the infrastructure, testing it, improving it at a pretty high speed. And so that's going to be like a progressive function, if anything.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And so if I was to deposit on the protocol, is there a kind of time delay function on how when I can kind of get my like liquidity back. Obviously, because what's happening on the back end, it wouldn't just be like I don't know, you go into Yearn with a like a Y die strategy or whatever it is, and I can kind of remove that at my own whim whenever I need to. Is it working like epoch stages? Like how does that all work?
Yeah. So you are able to withdraw. I mean, as long as there's enough liquidity, you're able to withdraw whenever you want. And so part of the rebalancing strategy actually takes into account how much liquidity there is on marketplaces and how much liquidity the vault has. So in fact, it does try to balance the liquidity levels in terms of kind of avoiding routing to illiquid marketplaces or pools that might cause you to have some kind of a liquidity. But I think outside of our initial launch of the Prologue Vault, which is prior to us adding a lot of the liquidity rebalancing features, we haven't had any problems with users kind of wanting liquidity. The other piece here is that like liquidity is even in like DeFi, I feel like you deposit into Aave, there is like some non-zero probability that it will be liquid. So like if you deposit into Aave and the utilization spikes, you might not be able to take your capital out, except the difference being is that Aave has relatively large pools and a lot of liquidity. So it would take a lot of users pulling out a lot of TVL to kind of get to that stage. That's where we're hoping to go. But it's going to be like a process of scaling liquidity to kind of get there.
Yeah, and that makes an awful lot of sense. So what, for a bit of kind of what I like to do sometimes is, I think particularly how fast the space is growing. One person can't be everywhere. I've tried to do it many times and failed miserably every single time. So maybe with people who are like yourselves that are kind of really, really vested in the NFTfi space, what other protocols that you kind of look at and kind of, I suppose, admire and see from a distance and think, yeah, this is really great for this specific kind of sector of the industry?
I got a few here for you. Here's the Shreddy soup of the day. I really love NFT perp. I know it's like a normie answer, but just the same way that GMX was able to onboard a bunch of liquidity into the Arbitrum ecosystem, I feel like NFT perp is a gateway to people understanding and using NFTs for, financial situations. I love NFT perp. I think it's really simple for people to use. We've talked to the team a lot, and they're great folks. I also love, and we've been working a little bit more with some of these protocols, options protocols. So there's guys like our partners Wasabi. I'm actually wearing their hat right now. Shout out to them. That are working on basically building out the best in decentralized NFT finance options, which I think offers, both of these derivatives offer a really unique use case and perspective on NFTs that didn't exist before, without, decimating floor prices or having, blur farming involved. I'm trying to think of a third one for you here. I would say probably, but I think those two are leading the charge right now in derivatives. And I'm curious to see Oogway's answer, what he's thinking here.
Yeah, I mean, I would say obviously any of the protocols and marketplaces that we're aggregating. I know that there's quite a few there, but X2Y2, Arcade, nft-fi, BendDAO, Paraspace are all, pretty incredibly talented teams that are all looking to scale out NFT lending, and I think those are all worth keeping an eye out. And I think Shreddy probably gave a pretty good overview. Wasabi's really up and coming. NFT Perp's got a pretty unique product. They're all, I mean, there's so many players, it's hard to even, list them all.
I did forget to mention our beautiful partners who we wouldn't partner and aggregate if we didn't think they were awesome protocols in the first place, right?
It seems like particularly when I have these interviews or calls with founders building in the space, it seems like a lot of really, really smart people are kind of congregating in this specific area, and the upside for me personally seems absolutely ridiculous. I can kind of see it really, really clearly. I can see it more clearly every time I see a new protocol pop up. And but where, like, I know we touched upon it at the beginning, but where do you think we are in this life cycle of this product ideation and the sector in and of itself? If we even scratch the surface, is there anything to kind of even compare it to? Like, obviously pre DeFi summer, particularly, I think. But like, where are your heads up with that?
So there was a recent statistic showed that volume on, I'll just take NFT lending as a sector, then we can extrapolate to NFT finance. Volume on NFT lending just crossed 1 billion, which is a big milestone, but that's over, years of work. And I think that that's been granularly ramping up as time goes along. I would say that we're super early. I still believe that. I was talking to a lot of founders at NFT NYC recently about this, especially for NFT lending and borrowing markets. There needs to be more participants on both sides of the market. But I still think we're super early. I think that, like you said, there's a think tank of really great minds that are working on all these problems, and I think that by them developing all of these unique solutions, whenever the rest of crypto is ready to make that jump, if that's the DeFi crowd, if that's the NFT communities, it will all be here, and that's what I think is really important. But I would say that we're still really early, and the amount of users is lower compared to, other, especially just, collection holders or users of DeFi protocols. I would probably equate it to something like, it would have to be before food farms, like early DeFi summer, when it was concentrated to just like a couple of groups of individuals. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add on there, Oogway? I'm sure you thought about this long and hard.
I mean, I think I probably have a lightly more radical take. Like, I honestly think that NFTs are, and not just NFT finance, but NFTs generally are still in the pre-2013, like where crypto was pre-2013.
Yes.
Like, I think it is difficult to describe how early I think we are, just with the amount of opportunities as well as problems that kind of exist in the space. There's definitely going to be a lot of brilliant talent that's going to start pouring in over the next few years, and I think we're going to be really surprised with what NFTs and NFT finance allows us to build.
Yeah, so just kick my my estimation back 7 years and extrapolate from there. It's like I guess it's like buying ETH at like $8, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a pitch, huh?
Yeah, too right it is. Shreddy, you touched on a little bit there. What do you think the spread is for the initial kind of driving force of users? So does it come primarily from the DeFi crowd? Does it come primarily from the NFT crowd? Or what kind of distribution across those both kind of mental communities? Where do you think like the largest kind of distribution comes from?
I'll say that initially the distribution that we've seen is that it's a lot of folks from DeFi who are pretty familiar with how lending works, which is a big step, right, in and of itself, and all of these other, NFT finance derivative projects, and they've got a good grasp on the financial side of things, and I think that's really important, obviously, because it's part of the name, NFT finance. What I would like is, in the future, I would love to see NFT collections supporting NFT finance protocols for their, for their communities, and I would also love to see the holders getting involved. I do think that right now it's concentrated largely though to folks who are more intimate with DeFi, and I think that's okay for now. That once those people understand the once they understand the potential for all of the yields that are possible in the space, which is honestly a very huge driving factor for a lot of crypto, I think there will be more of them, and then the other side will come over. But for us, it's been a lot of DeFi users.
Yeah, we just need that guy to come back who created that video about UST and getting 20% on TikTok.
Yeah,
and getting a house.
we need we need it for Spice Finance. I'll find him. We'll make it over.
Sure, you haven't mortgaged your house to deposit in our vault yet?
Yeah.
Oh God, that's when things cut through. Jesus Christ. I don't know. Being an NFT top buyer every single time, and I've just bought a new Kampai Panda. So read into that what you will. What collections are you enjoying at the minute? Is there anything that's really standing out? Obviously, you're going to be a little bit biased with some of them, but is there anything that you kind of see and that you're really, really enjoying at the minute?
I think I've always been a fan of Miladies. I think the culture is great. I love the memetics is off the chain. I myself am a Milady and Remilio enjoyer and holder. So I'm a little bit biased there. I'm loving the marketing. I think this is a marketing play that's coming out. I don't know if you heard about this, where it was like on all staged, this whole ENS situation, and it flipped into like a Milady marketing channel. It's a whole rabbit hole of schizo posting, but I love the Miladies. I think there's a couple sleeper collections out there that are pretty cool that I haven't really explored too much, that I need to look into a little bit more. I think Valhalla is really cool. They've got a nice aesthetic to them. They have a nice community built around them. And then I do like Arbitrum NFTs. So, Diamond Pepes always have a spot in my heart.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. What about yourself, Oogway?
Yeah, I'm on the hunt for a Milady at the moment. I think I've been convinced by the schizo posting. Like Rec Guys a good amount. I think the community and culture is pretty solid. Valhalla is also super cool. And then generally, I think like one set of NFTs that I want to get exposure to and I think are really interesting. Just anything kind of around gaming or Web3 gaming, I think is going to be pretty huge. And I'm sure there are amazing teams kind of working on this that are good ops. I'm just not well versed enough to know which one to dive into at the moment. But it's on my radar.
Yeah, there's a dude Pass who made a Web3, not Web3, CT. So he basically took all the characters from crypto Twitter, all of your favorite influencers, and put them in like a carding game. And you see that? This. Looks really good. Yeah. And like I want to play that. I love those kind of things for the culture. I actually think it's super important to have those kind of projects, and what they're going to basically have is something. I think it's something similar to like a games launcher that you would find in a traditional gaming setting, but then you'll be able to play these different like blockchain almost mini games or party games, something like that. I think I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that was any time we had like an IT lesson in school, we would spend just like on the likes of you mini clip and all these mini games. Never learned a single thing and just spent hours and hours and hours upon these mini games.
Cool math games. Yes.
One more from me. Who wins, Blur or OpenSea?
Tough.
This is a good question.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna go first. I'm just gonna say Blur, and I don't even have a reason why. I just like I like the branding. Go ahead, Oogway.
Honestly, I would say it's like a 60-40 Blur OpenSea at the moment. I think it's really going to come down to, what do Blur tokenomics look like down the line, and what are Blur and OpenSea going to ship next? Like, what's the next big product? Because I think that is probably going to drive a lot of adoption. But OpenSea's got pretty significant name brand that I think, is difficult to kind of overthrow. And with the launch of like OpenSea Pro, for example, like that, that ecosystem has become even better. So I'm like pretty split on this. I don't think I can really give a winner at the moment.
Yeah. I just I think they're doing a really good job of going head to head. For me, it's because of my background. It's all about like what's more pretty, and I think Blur's got it. Even though it's like not pretty per se, it's like aesthetically pleasing, and I think that the UX and UI design of some of these sites is really important. But also, like, I acknowledge that OpenSea is a household name basically in NFTs, so there is no doubt that they're a force to be reckoned with. We'll see.
Yeah. So I think of OpenSea the same way I think of Coinbase.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same thing. I'm like, it's probably akin to just a very like it probably would come to mind for most people instead of Blur, but obviously Blur is doing insane volume. So
yeah,
a
Uniswap even in the conversation, or do you think they can be?
I don't know. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think. To be honest, I don't know if like there's a lot of designs I think like winning NFT exchange designs that could they could effectively derail the current push of theirs to really be the dominant fungible token exchange market. They're like completely different. They're like very different asset classes and token structures to be dealing with. And so outside of Uniswap's like brand name for fungible tokens, I don't know if they necessarily have what it takes to kind of build a successful like winning NFT exchange. But I think it's yet to be seen. I mean, all these teams have incredibly talented minds and engineers behind them. So, and I think it's going to be it's like a next cycle kind of is going to determine a lot of the winners and losers. But I would be surprised if we don't have like underdogs coming in and taking the entire market. I mean, in a similar vein to what you had Blur do to OpenSea.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. The only thing that I didn't think, I felt like Uniswap were trying to push an NFT product just for the sake of it, and then it kind of clicked last week for me with the app in the Apple Store. You can onboard through MoonPay and purchase directly. That's probably the only removing that friction, I think. But again, it definitely didn't work for FTX. It definitely didn't work for the Coinbase marketplace, because as soon as people seeing how much it actually costs when it's coming out of their bank, they don't want to know.
Exactly.
But if it's priced in ETH, then that's great.
Hurts less. It's a smaller number,
Gents, I've really enjoyed the past 50 minutes. Thank you very much for joining. Is there anything that I might have missed off being a terrible interviewer? Is there anything you want to cover before we kind of wrap it up?
By the way, you're doing an amazing job, an incredible thing for crypto, and we really applaud you. Just last thoughts. Like I said, Spice is releasing a public vault on April 20th. So if anybody enjoyed any of the conversations we had and feels like they want to try NFT lending, but they don't want to go, out to these different fragments in marketplaces and try to suss out parameters and all that, just come to Spice, deposit your tokens, and that's the whole point. We kind of, the Spice protocol takes care of the back end, all that mess for you. So, April 20th, that's coming. You can also find us on Twitter at Spice_Finance, and you can also join our Discord, join our community. We're always in there, always chatting. Oogway, you want to give any final thoughts?
I mean, I think everything was covered.
Yeah.
The questions were great, and we're happy to have been invited to chat with you.
Yeah, anytime. As soon as you guys kind of roll some more products out, maybe next quarter or the quarter after that, let's do it again. Let's show some stuff off, and just ping me a message whenever you want to come on. Always happy to chat. But thanks again for your time, and anyone who's listening, if you are listening on Spotify and wanting to kind of see some of the UI stuff, just head to YouTube. You can definitely see the video on Spotify, but I don't know what kind of maniac you are watching videos on Spotify. Yeah. Go and see a doctor. But yeah, thanks again, everyone, and we'll speak to you next time.